I'm feeling a little ungrateful because despite football being back for the first time in months on Saturday, my mind keeps drifting forward to the two most stacked weekends in HBCU football. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode with a two-part Monday mailbox responses. I would say it's 4 comments, but I got a conversation between a couple of viewers. I got a ton of comments from that Jackson State video that opened up last week. We had like almost 100 comments on that video. I couldn't narrow it down to one, so I'm just kind of responding to everybody in a blanket statement about competition versus money, and then also the SWAC's place in the FCS. Will wrap up today's episode. But we kick this whole thing off with football because finally the speculation of I'm just interested to see this. What does this depth chart look like? That's going to be put on the back burner. Yeah, we'll talk about that for a little bit, especially throughout the out-of-conference schedule. But we're about to get real football on Saturday. We get the MEAC SWAC Challenge on Saturday. Games that actually matter, not just scrimmages, not just practice, not just this guy looked good. We get to see it with our own eyes on Saturday, and I'm extremely excited about it. And I know I opened it up saying I feel a tad bit ungrateful, but these are just jokes. I'm actually ecstatic, and I can't help but look forward to the two most stacked weekends. I'm not a head coach. Right? I don't subscribe to the only look at week 1. I don't have to. I don't have to overlook anybody or worry about overlooking anybody because I'm not playing the game. If I'm a Texas Southern fan, which I am, and I look to week 4, I don't have to worry about overlooking the week 1 opponent. Now, I know for us, week 1 means a lot. For certain people, week 1 means a lot. For Southern, for North Carolina Central, it means a lot. But for me, I'm going to tell you what means a lot to me as a viewer, as a fan, as somebody who just loves this sport with everything in them. September 27th and November 1st. Those 2 weekends, and November 1st is a little bit weird because you have a Thursday game in there. But those 2 weeks are the weeks that I can't help but be excited and wait for. I'm anticipating it. If you start off with September 27th, this is the opening of SWAC play. This is the beginning of SWAC play. You'll have the Labor Day Classic, so you'll have PV versus TSU already, but everybody else will be starting their conference slate on the 27th. And I remember I was looking, I was like, oh, wow, North Carolina Central comes to Texas. They play East Texas A&M. I should try to make my way out for that game. But then I looked at what other games are going to be going on, and I'm not just talking about viewership as far as looking on the TV. You got the State Fair Classic. You got Jackson State versus Southern. You got Alabama State versus FAMU. This is a stacked weekend to open up SWAC play, and I can't wait for it. I understand we have football this week, and I'm excited about it. I can't wait to break down this game. And as we move on through this week, we'll narrow our focus. We'll look closer at Southern. We'll look closer at North Carolina Central. For those who are new everydayers, we'll have our game of the week on Friday. And then going into next week, we'll have our regular, programming for if you've been around, if you're new, you'll see it's a little bit different during football season than it is during basketball season or off season. But I mean, as excited as I am for that, I can't help but look at Alabama State versus FAMU, Jackson State versus Southern, Grambling versus PV. And I understand for some people, maybe that doesn't mean everything, but it's in Dallas, so it's not far from me. So I'm excited about that. And I get to, it's kind of something that means a little bit more regionally So I accept that. But then also Grambling is a team where I like Mickey Joseph a lot. I really do. I think that Mickey Joseph has the makings of a good head coach. When he speaks, I like to listen. So I want to see what he's able to do in year 2 with the Tigers. That's a team that I'm really interested in. It's not a team that I'm necessarily watching to be a top contender, but I do wonder if Joseph can get them there. So I'm interested to see how they perform against PV. And then as far as Prairie View goes, this will be their second SWAC contest. So I'll already have judged them based off what happens with Texas Southern. But then again, I'm not sure how I feel about TSU at all. So these measuring stick moments continue to build up. So I am excited for that game. You look at Jackson State versus Southern. Jackson State is the defending champions. They're the team that everybody wants to talk about. They're the team that everybody is attempting to beat. Not only that, we sprinkled a little bit of cayenne on this matchup when Herman Brister talked about how it's going to be different in 2025. You got to understand, Southern is a game away from their longest losing streak against Jackson State in history, right? I think they would tie it with one more loss. This is a game that not only has historical ramifications in that way, but then also, hey, man, this is the SWAC championship from last year. It's the predicted SWAC championship for this year. This could be a game where I don't know if Southern, from a confidence standpoint, how many times can you lose to a team in the same, or excuse me, lose to a team consecutively and then play them in a championship game and still feel like, yeah, we got them? You know, like this is a game that could honestly shift the confidence between the Southern and Jackson State matchup if they were to face off again in the championship game. And then Alabama State versus FAMU, that's always a good game. That's always a very interesting game. And it's a matchup between two teams that I want to see who are you in 2025. I've put the spotlight on Andrew Body. I don't need to do it again, not today at least. Maybe we'll talk about that next week as we get into action. But honestly, that's where the questions reside for Alabama State. But then also you lost some people on defense and the coaching staff. What are you going to be like as a defensive team? That's been your identity. That has been your identity for 3 years, right? Like it's been an identity since Eddie Robinson has joined. And now you lose your DC, you lose your cornerbacks coach. I got questions. I really do. But then also that FAMU team who's trying to bounce back. This has always been a heated game. So that's just a big matchup. Jackson State versus Southern, heated game, big matchup. Grambling versus PV, heated game, big matchup. These are huge matchups in this week for the SWAC. Excuse me. And then the North Carolina Central versus East Texas A&M game was one that I was looking forward to because, A, it's close to me. Now, obviously, I won't go because I'll more than likely go to the State Fair Classic. But that was a game that I was looking at because I always love North Carolina Central's out-of-conference schedule. So it's something I'm always placing the spotlight on. Now, this was the weekend that got me because I don't remember how. I think I was looking for a specific week for some game, and I stumbled across this stacked weekend. So I wanted to see if the MEAC had something similar, and they do. Instead of September 27th, where you also sprinkle in a MEAC game, you also have November 1st, and that's very MEAC-centric. Now, when looking for this, there's less room for filler. So if you're talking about success rate, you're probably going to have, probably, I think you have 100% success rate here. You have banger, banger, banger. With the SWAC, you got TSU versus Mississippi Valley State. I don't really care. Alcorn versus UAPB, not really moving me. I think Alabama A&M versus Bethune-Cookman has some legs to be a good matchup. It's not one that's jumping out at me, but it is one that I'll probably keep a side eye on. But they have the ability to have games like TSU versus Valley, right? Where we don't really care what happens. In the MEAC, you only got 6 teams. You got 3 squads because now we're in conference play for them. And this isn't their opening week, but it's their second week of November 1st. There's probably 2.5, 3 games that I'm really looking forward to in this conference. When I say looking forward to, I mean excited, like jumping out my seat, can't wait, looking forward to. But you have one of them being the Delaware State versus Norfolk State game. And that's on a Thursday, right? So that's going to be October 30th. Then you get Halloween the next day. Then you get real spooky on the 1st when you have your other 2 matchups. And like I said, it's only 3 games. So you're going to go Howard versus Central, and you're going to have South Carolina State versus Morgan State, excuse me. But these are really big time games because I want to see what Morgan State can be. And this is the first or the second week of MEAC play. Everybody's still in measuring stick mode. I'm not judging people too harshly based off what they do in out of conference play. I think that out of conference play a lot of times is treated like extra credit, and it's something that I want to see how you perform in, but it's not something I'm going to fully judge your team. Now, if you do good, I'm sitting here like, oh yeah, you're going to be a top flight team, especially if you play some good talent. I'm watching and I'm making evaluations, but I'm not cementing my evaluation after out of conference play. So when it comes to Morgan State, I think that South Carolina State game is going to be the first measuring stick of who they are. I think that's going to be the first measuring stick that tells me exactly. Let me make sure that they don't play Central the week before, actually. But yeah, that's going to be the first game. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see if they're here. Okay, so they play Howard. So I guess actually that probably be the first measuring stick, because I look at them as 2 third-place teams trying to battle out for who's going to be that squad that can make the jump. But then you go to South Carolina State, and I want to see what they're going to be. I want to see everything. Like, there's so many questions when it comes to this. In the week before, South Carolina State plays North Carolina A&T, then Norfolk State. And it's like, I don't know how I feel about either one of those opponents. I don't know how I feel about South Carolina State. I do have a pretty good idea how I feel about Morgan State. So that's the difference. And then you have North Carolina Central versus Howard, which I'm still holding on to the heat that comes from that. I think that Howard is, man, you look at that Howard and that Howard and Morgan State beginning to MEAC schedule. The beginning to their MEAC schedule is going to be really grueling. It's going to be really tough. But I'm looking forward to it. And then you have some other potential games. And there you have Bama State versus PV, which I'm looking forward to. I think Alcorn versus TSU has potential. And by that time, we'll know if we're looking forward to it. I think Grambling versus Alabama A&M has some potential. The same way I said Alabama A&M versus Bethune-Cookman has some potential. So these 2 weeks, September 27th and then November 1st-ish, because you also have the Delaware State versus Norfolk State, which ironically is the main event of that game or of that week. It is actually on a Thursday. But this to me, are the 2 most stacked weeks. And you put them up side by side. I don't know which one is bigger. I think it made us determine if you're MEAC focused or SWAC focused. But you go through these games. Give me on 1 week, Alabama State versus FAMU, Jackson State versus Southern, Grambling versus PV, North Carolina Central versus East Texas A&M. Then the other week, you give me Norfolk State versus Delaware State, Howard versus North Carolina Central, Morgan State versus South Carolina State, Bama State versus PV. And then here comes some potentials. Alcorn versus TSU, Grambling versus Alabama A&M. These are stacked weekends. And I know I need to focus on Saturday because we have the MEAC SWAC Challenge. But I thought we'd commemorate the beginning, the very first game week of the season by telling you which game weeks I am most excited to see. So we'll do that, or excuse me, we'll look forward to that when it happens. But as we move forward, we're going to do a little bit of Monday Mailbox, answering a ton of questions that came from this Jackson State scheduling conversation on Monday. So let's do that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. And if you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, right? Maybe you're still on campus. Shout out to my campus listeners. Or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where Drip Drop comes into play. I've been trying to stay on top of mine, and Drip Drop helps me do everything more efficiently. I feel like my skin looks better. I feel like I'm getting more fluids. I just move throughout the day a little bit better. So Drip Drop is doctor developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. It's easy, it's delicious, it's quick, and it's effective. What more could you possibly want? Did I say that it's tasty? If I didn't, I'll say it again. It's tasty, delicious, it's good, it's flavorful. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Browns. My mouth just got dry. I brushed my teeth before I started, so I need to get some drip drop when I finish recording, right? But check out Locked On Browns. Everybody's talking about Shedeur Sanders and their quarterback situation. Make sure that you are checking that out for yourself. Speaking of Shedeur Sanders, speaking of this former HBCU Jackson State, we had an interesting conversation on last Monday's episode, the Monday Mailbox, right? And Woo-wee. When I tell you the comments were flooded, I think we have almost, if not 100 comments on that video as far as just responses from Jackson State fans. And it was probably one or two people in there defending Lawrence who had the comment of basically he wants to see Jackson State play a top 25 team. And this is actually one of the pitfalls of Monday Mailbox that it doesn't sway me. I think I'll continue to do it if we can find time for it within the season, which I assume we will. But one of the pitfalls is when it comes to trash talk. I don't know that Lawrence was participating in trash talk. I don't know that Lawrence was discrediting Jackson State. But Jackson State fans apparently have heard that comment as a way to discredit them constantly. I guess I have not heard it, but the way that the fans were responding, Jackson State fans were responding, I can only assume that this is something they've heard multiple times. I don't know. I know that I came from a genuine place. I feel like Lawrence came from a genuine place because I've seen him on another video talking about scheduling there, and it was not Jackson State related. So take it for what it is. But the pitfall is sometimes you get caught up in narratives, and I'm just responding. I care about scheduling. Some people maybe don't care about scheduling until it comes to Jackson State. I don't know. Maybe that's just fan talk, right? But here's the thing. Let's get into what it really is. This is what it's really about for me. It's competitiveness versus money. It's competitive games versus what's going to generate you the most revenue. I have no problem with prioritizing revenue. However, I do have a problem with the attitude of fans who prioritize revenue, because it always seems to be, there seems to be no respect for competitive nature. That's my issue. It's not the fact that, hey, I'd rather go play this game that gets me a lot of money than talk about playing an FCS top 25 opponent. It's the era of, why would we do that? You know, and I don't know. Maybe I'm a different type of fan, because to me, the money talk, I think, goes too far. I think the money talk gets applied in so many different conversations that we can't even just talk about being the best or playing against the best, right? Like I remember, I think it was Tennessee State. I'm pretty sure it was Tennessee State who played North Dakota State 2 years ago. And it was just like, hey, we want to play the top competition. We want to compete with those guys. Understandably, Tennessee State is in a different situation than Jackson State or any SWAC or MEAC school. I get that. I respect that. But my thing is, I want to be seen as the best in the country. I do. I think that is a sign of respect, is a badge of respect. I like that feeling. I want to go out and compete with people and show that I'm the best. I've heard things about HBCU football, about SWAC football, and I don't want to be pigeonholed into that conversation. And for those who tell me to worry about Texas Southern, I got two comments. One, this is Locked On HBCU. This is not Locked On Texas Southern. If it was, then I would only talk about my school. And if it was, you probably wouldn't be here, right? So that's number one. Telling me to worry about TSU doesn't make sense on a program that is all about all HBCUs. Secondly, TSU ain't that good, right? Like, TSU is not Celebration Bowl defending champions. So when you're telling me to talk about TSU and focus on who they play, yeah, I know they play Virginia Lynchburg. I don't like that either. But at the same time, I'm not sitting here talking about what one of the lower teams in the conference is doing as far as scheduling. I'm not clamoring for a team that I don't think is one of the best in HBCU football to go play one of the best in FCS football. And I think if we actually take the glasses off of fandom, that's not a hard concept to grasp. But you want to reach for straws because I said something that maybe you didn't like, so you feel the need to take a jab at my team. But it's a jab that missed. It's a jab that doesn't make sense. You didn't check your range, so you just threw a punch, but it didn't connect. And I think that I need to tell you, hey, this doesn't make sense, guys. Right? Like you're deflecting. If we're not going to do the whole analogy thing, when comments like that are made, you're deflecting. Because the truth of the matter is, I know I made a valid point. I know Lawrence made a valid point. Have other people made that point to hate and maybe made it invalid? Okay, I accept that. But I know I made a valid point in wanting to see the best team. And I said this to somebody in the comment, they understood. And we had a conversation about just basically knowing where I'm coming from. And that's kind of part of what made me realize that other people have used this narrative. And I hate that because it's what I feel. It's what I look forward to. I talk about scheduling. So like other people doing it in a dismissive a dismissive manner, I can't control that, but I can control what I talk about. But for me, in general, it seems like people don't want to be competitive. And I've heard people say, "Oh, what if we lose?" Then you lose, right? Like, what are you talking about? What if we lose that game? Then it doesn't help. Yeah, it doesn't help. You lost. Okay, you move on. That's just what it is. And I don't think there's any conversation about it. You took the risk. And if we're talking about how it doesn't affect the end of your season, then who cares if you lose? But it's that attitude, it's that statement that makes me feel like, you're saying what they say now, the quiet part outside. I mean, out loud. I think that's what they say. It feels like saying, what if we lose? That's the quiet part. You don't want to take the risk. That's part of being competitive. And it's okay if you don't want to take the risk. It's okay if you want to prioritize money. My problem is, I think that it's a veil for saying you just don't want to take the risk of losing a game. And that's okay. And don't tell me to talk to the athletic director. I'm not. If I can't have an opinion on this show, you can't have an opinion in my comments. How about that? All right. Next time somebody want to say, focus on yourself or go talk to somebody, you don't need to talk about that. You don't need to respond in my comments. That's how I feel. All right. Because if you're trying to say that my qualifications don't qualify me to speak about this, I would love to know what your qualifications are to talk about it in my comments. Because I feel like we must be on equal playing field. Now, if A.D. Robinson come in and he say something in the comments, all right, we can have a conversation. And next time you want to tell me to talk to the athletic director, send them my email, send me their email. Matter of fact, let's exchange phone numbers and we can get it going. That's how I feel. But let's move forward. Monday Mailbox, we're going to keep this next one pretty short. Pretty short. It's about where the SWAC stands and then also North Carolina Central status in the MEAC. So let's wrap up today's episode. We're going good today and I'm loving it. All right, let's continue as we continue with Locked On HBCU, discussing those comments. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. I just went to the Wings game. I told you I was going to go to Game Time. I was going to get me some Dallas Wings tickets, and I'm excited to tell you I finally did it. The game was intense. The game was fun. It was my first ever WNBA game, and I think that I'm actually upset because I looked at the remaining games, and I wish I would have went to the Aces. This would have been a good one, but instead, we went to the Sparks game. I had a great time. Me and my friend went, and they got good seats, man. Game Time is going to make sure that you're taken care of with the best prices, the best seats, the best deals. And I had myself a blast. I don't know what's next. Is it a Saints game? Is it a Pelicans game? Is it a Mavericks game? Is it a ballet? Is it a theater play? I don't know. Is it a monster truck event? Whatever it may be. All I know is that my tickets will be found on Game Time, and you should do the same. Unfortunately, I'm not new to this, so I didn't get the opportunity to use the code Locked On College for $20 off my first purchase, but you can. If you're new to Game Time, download the app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited, guys. I am actually really excited about this season. So we're doing our last Monday Mailbox of the offseason, but we'll be back with it, and hopefully we're talking about football that actually played moving forward. But let's get real quick through this because these were a couple of things. Someone said, this is also something from that Jackson State conversation. He said, and he's a Hampton fan, I believe, is the SWAC an insular conference, totally uninterested in the activities of those around them? If so, the FCS ranked opponents don't matter, and we should not be placing or discussing them amongst the FCS top 25. If not, let's see them start by surviving Hampton. That was interesting. Surviving Hampton. If Hampton beats Jackson State, the conversations that are going to occur on social media, on this platform, and it's week 1, that's going to be crazy. But to the Insular Conference being totally uninterested, I think that unaffected is a better word to say. I do not believe that the SWAC is uninterested, and specifically talking to fans. I think that a lot of fans want that top 25 nod. It's one of the reasons I push for competitiveness so much. It's one of the reasons I get aggravated when people act like they don't want to be competitive, because I think people want the respect of being top 25, high in the top 25, but they don't want to do the things that typically get you to rise in the top 25. And that's kind of my issue. It's always we want this desired outcome, but we don't want to do what typically leads to it. We've seen it work in our route. Therefore, we feel confident enough to only go that path. But there's a path that gets there, right? Like, it's not like the highway versus, or it's the highway versus the street. It's the highway versus the street, where one route takes significantly longer. And it's not even a great parallel, to be honest, because when you're not playing outside of your conference, you're not playing tough games outside of your conference, I do think there's a limit, because the way you rise in FCS top 25, in any top 25 ranking, is typically by playing the best of the best. So I don't think that people are uninterested. They are unaffected because the goal is the Celebration Bowl, right? And especially in a SWAC, where just pure scheduling of the SWAC championship, you could be one of the better teams, but not make it to the Celebration Bowl and still not make it to the playoffs. So I think in the MEAC, they care a little bit more because timing allows them to go to the FCS playoffs a little bit more, but in the SWAC, not so much. So I wouldn't say they're an insular conference that is completely uninterested, just unaffected, because I definitely hear people complain about not getting the proper respect. And this is not to say that teams can't make it to the FCS top 25 without playing a tough out-of-conference schedule. It happens literally every year. I think it'd be wrong and dumb for me to say that was the case. It happens every year. I just think there's a cap on how far you can move up, and people typically want to be higher. If people didn't complain, I wouldn't say the things I say. But also, enough of the scheduling thing. Somebody said, where was it? Oh, there you go. Everything lines up for North Carolina Central to make it to Atlanta. No excuses this year. And then someone said that is what some people said last year and the year before. Look what happened both times. South Carolina State is a strong team and should be won every year with the current coach. I'm going to respond to that and one more really quickly. This just shows how difficult it is to win a championship. I don't think that all roads are clear for North Carolina Central. I think that I have questions about who South Carolina State is, so I will not jump to say North Carolina Central is the clear-cut favorite. They didn't even win the preseason polls. I think that it's still a two-team race. It just shows how difficult it is to win a championship. Then lastly, somebody said, I'm so sick of ESPN changing that game. That's 3 straight times. Leave it alone. I'm mad the MEAC didn't fight for the game. We need a MEAC TV. I'll pay $30 for it. I do think that's on the way. I think SWAC TV is just the beginning of something that you're going to see multiple teams, multiple conferences replicate. We have the coalition between the MEAC, the SWAC, the SIAC, and the CIAA, and I think having conference TV is going to be something that we see more and more often, at least with the MEAC, because you're right. This is a game that didn't deserve the placement that it got. Talking about South Carolina State versus North Carolina Central. And the easiest way to take that away is by owning that game. And the easiest way to do that is with a MEAC TV of their own. I think it's on the way. Not inside information, just a core belief or just a inner belief. On tomorrow's episode, we'll be talking about FAMU's quarterback situation. Talked about it all year, and I'm excited because they're starting to narrow down their search. So now we can narrow down our conversation. I'll see you tomorrow as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Until the next time, until we hear each other, take care, stay blessed. Peace.